Hello, welcome back. Happy October. October is today. I've got pumpkins. It is fall. I'm feeling it. October is my favorite month for many, many reasons. We got married in October. I love fall. But my main reason for loving October is that October is Down Syndrome Awareness Month. So for this next month, I'm going to be doing a lot of focus on appreciating Down syndrome and loving Down syndrome and all kinds of fun stuff. And so today I'm going to start that. So on October 1st, what I want to do is I want to answer questions about questions people have about what is life like having a kid with Down syndrome. Specifically, I asked on Instagram and I asked some friends and I got a couple good questions. So I want to answer those today. I feel like there's some misconceptions about what it's like to actually live your life with someone with Down syndrome, and so I want to talk about that. So welcome to the first video of Down Syndrome Awareness Month. Okay, so I got questions from a couple different places, but let me pull up, I took screenshots of them. First question: what is one thing you wish you knew before having a baby with Down syndrome? So I did not have a baby with Down syndrome. We adopted a baby with Down syndrome, and I think if I could go back and tell pre-mom Taylor anything, it is to remember that George is a baby before he is a baby with Down syndrome. Here's what I mean. When George was like 8 months old, he started, doing typical baby things like throwing tantrums and teething and not sleeping. And I realized that I had done a ton of emotional and mental prep work about being the mom to a baby with Down syndrome. So I was ready to go to doctor's appointments and therapies, and I was ready to advocate for him. I was ready to do all that. But I forgot that he would do typical baby stuff too. I forgot that there would be times that he was just grumpy. And I forgot that there will be times where he is teething because he is a baby before he has his diagnosis. And that sounds funny to say because I'm a big advocate of always remembering that he's a person before he's this person with a diagnosis. And so it was a good reminder for me to keep in mind that he is an individual with human problems and human things. And so I think it's always a good reminder to everyone that they are humans. They are not happy all the time. They have problems. They have bad days, and that the typical things that parents go through, I was still going to go through. I wasn't exempt of the other hard stuff because I had to deal with different hard stuff. So yeah, that's what I wish I had known before. Next question: would you ever adopt a second kiddo with Down syndrome? That's very, very commonly asked. The answer is we would never say no. Kyle and I are very open that we want more children, and I don't think we're done adopting. I think, who knows what our family story is going to look like. We are definitely open to it. If I had to guess, my guess is that Kyle and I will foster older children with Down syndrome down the road. There are a lot of older children waiting to be adopted or waiting to have foster homes with Down syndrome. You can find them at the NDSAN website. I'll put the link down below if you are interested. So that's my guess, is that we will foster older children with Down syndrome instead of adopting another baby. But who knows? Who knows? Next question: has having a kid with Down syndrome been hard on your marriage? This gets asked to me all the time. And this was actually something that people brought up to me and Kyle before George came home, was aren't you worried about what that will do to your marriage? Here's what I will say. Having kids is hard on a marriage. Having children strains things, it makes things hard. No. The answer for us is no. Having a child with Down syndrome has not negatively affected our relationship. Having a child hasn't negatively affected our relationship. It is hard to co-parent. It is hard especially to spend 6 months in quarantine. But George's diagnosis is not what makes that hard at all. And a lot of people like to bring up to me about the divorce rate of families who have kids with different abilities. And there's actually a more specific study. I don't have the name of it off the top of my head. I have read this study though about how that is not true for families with Down syndrome. The divorce rate of parents with Down syndrome is lower than that of other disabilities. So here's what I've always said, is that if I was afraid to raise kids that had disabilities with Kyle, I wouldn't have married Kyle, because it is so likely that parents will end up raising a child that has additional needs. That's just a very common thing. And so I was not afraid of what that would do to our marriage. I'm still not afraid of what it will do to our marriage long term. We have a very solid, good marriage, and George has really only kind of made it better. I mean, there are still hard parts of it for sure. Being parents is very hard, but we are such a team with him, and we are so on the same page about so much of his life that I think it's actually been really, really good for our marriage. I can't speak for every marriage, of course, but ours has been very positively impacted by George. And whether that's because of his diagnosis or not, we can't say for sure. But no, our marriage has not been negatively affected by having a kid with Down syndrome. Okay, let's go. What's next? Okay, it comes with an awesome community. When do you feel the most connected? When do you feel the most lonely? What a good question. The community of Down syndrome families is the best. I've talked about it a lot. I will talk about it till I die. The Down syndrome community is my favorite thing on the planet. I very rarely feel lonely, is the actual truth, because of that community. I feel the most connected, this is going to sound weird, when George is falling behind in something. When George is delayed in hitting a milestone, or when George had a rough day at therapy, or we got bad news at a doctor or something like that. I have so many people that I can go to that get it, and so many people that have been through the exact same thing. I have dear people that I love that have adopted kids with Down syndrome that feel the way that I do about a lot of things. And so when things get hard, I am the most secure because I know that I have these people that I can rely on and that I can be very honest with, because the thing about the Down syndrome community is that they don't wish you to be any different than what you are. They accept you exactly the way that you are. And so yeah, it's this really weird thing where if something negative happens, even if he has like a really bad tantrum day, I can go to my birth group and just be like, really, really rough day, you know, this is what happened. Or I can message some of my friends that have kids with Down syndrome and I'm like, what's happening? And so when things get hard, I feel the most connected. When do I feel the most lonely? Oh, I feel the most lonely for sure. This is very obvious, but when I am away from the Down syndrome community for a long time. And here's what I mean. Our inner circle is very accepting and loving of George. Very, very. I have no negative things to say about any of our inner circle, about how they interact with George and how they hold him accountable and they have expectations. It's been great. But there is this sense of like exhale when you are around families that are like yours in their experiences. And so there is this sense of relief. So I think when I get really lonely is when I'm not around parents whose kids are developing differently like mine is. And so I can fall into that trap of, look at my friends' kids doing all these great things that George is not. I am very capable of falling victim to that. I work very hard not to, and I'm actually very proud. I don't do that very often. But if I spend enough time away from the Down syndrome community, I do fall into that. And I do play that evil comparison game that every parent does. And so it's the Down syndrome community has been such a gift to us because it has really eased that part of parenting, because it reminds me not to compare, and it reminds me that milestones are whatever. Wait, hold on. I gotta make sure I'm recording. Oh, I'm old. What is next? Let's see. Okay, what has surprised you most about having a kiddo with Down syndrome? What has surprised me most is actually, I think it's been the societal perception. And I say that having known what the societal perception of Down syndrome was. I guess the thing I was shocked by is how parents of kids with Down syndrome are viewed. I knew how people viewed people and individuals with Down syndrome, but was that the question? I want to make sure I'm answering that right. Yeah, surprised me. What surprised me most was how me and Kyle are treated and viewed. We do a lot of work in making sure that people don't think of us as heroes, and we do a lot of work to always recenter conversations around George and around him and not around what we have done. I think that there is an instinct when hearing about people who have chosen to adopt a child with Down syndrome to treat them as though they have done something special because of that. And I was very surprised to see how true that was. How when George came home, we were treated as though we had done something very heroic. And I expected that when there was this baby that came home with us, that would go away. And I thought that he would become the hero, and he did not. It is still us, and that's disappointing to me. But it is a very good opportunity for us to teach and to talk and to learn and to listen. And yeah, so I guess the way that parents of kiddos with Down syndrome are viewed was very surprising and kind of disheartening for me. Let's read another question. Hardest part about having George. This is a funny question because I think the person asking it meant like, what is the hardest thing about having a kid with Down syndrome? Which I think is a question, I mean, no one asked me that. Is his personality. Let me, okay. The hardest part about having George is George. because I talked earlier about how I didn't remember that like George was going to be a typical baby toddler and like go through all of that as well. The hardest part about having George, about being George's mom, has nothing to do with his Down syndrome. It's got entirely to do with his personality. I've talked about this, I think, on YouTube before, but George is a hothead. George has a temper, and George is opinionated, and George is fiery, and I love that about him. It makes me and Kyle's job 1,000 times harder. He is so stubborn, he is so strong-willed, but I love it because he's going to be such a good self-advocate as he gets older, which I would want for any of my children, neurotypical or not. And so what is hard is that I've had to learn how to like respond to that because I didn't realize how bossy a 19-year-old nonverbal toddler could be. And so it's very hard. George is not an easy toddler. He was not an easy baby. But that's got nothing to do with his diagnosis. Like, and I say that from a parent whose kid is not medically complex. George has no medical issues. So I'm sure if George had medical issues, that would be the hardest thing about having George. But because I don't have that experience with my child, for sure what is hardest for me is that my son is hot-headed. Okay, the last question that I am going to answer for this video is, what is one thing you would tell someone who has just had a baby with Down syndrome? So if you are new to having a child with Down syndrome, congratulations, welcome to the club, it's the best. I would say find your community and find your people, and sometimes they are different. So find your Down syndrome community, find your local organization, find your Gigi's Playhouse, find whatever you can to find the people that will get it, that will do that, and that you can have as those people. They are so important. And then also find your people. Also find the people who don't have kids with Down syndrome, but who will love your kid and treat your child the way that you would like them to. They are both very, very important, and we are very, very lucky that we have had both of those experiences. So that is where I'm going to end it. A lot of these questions were asked multiple times, so some of them I answered in different phrasing, but those were kind of the main several that got asked repeatedly. So that is a little bit about what it's like to live your life with a child with Down syndrome. It's not that different from what I understand, but I also don't know because my only child has Down syndrome. So that's my experience. Stay tuned. October is going to be really fun. I have a lot of fun stuff planned on this channel, on Instagram, on Facebook, so make sure you find us all across the boards. I'm so excited. We love Down syndrome. Happy October 1st. Have a great day.